Why you have no motivation after spiritual awakening. Have you ever wondered why, after your spiritual awakening, the fire that once drove you suddenly fizzled out? You were once chasing goals, grinding every day, checking boxes, and then, boom, everything shifted. You saw through the illusion, touched something real, something eternal, and now the hustle feels hollow. That's not laziness, it's alignment demanding truth. The reason you have no motivation isn't because you're lost, it's because you've outgrown the game you were playing. This isn't the end of your drive, it's the beginning of a new direction, one not powered by pressure, but by purpose. The moment you wake up spiritually is the moment the world stops bribing you with shallow rewards. The first and most confusing reason you feel no motivation after a spiritual awakening is because the world's rewards no longer seduce you. Before awakening, you were like most people operating in a system that runs on external validation. Promotions, status, luxury, applause, likes, followers, paychecks, titles. These were the breadcrumbs that kept you chasing, and let's be honest, they worked. They got you up in the morning. They pushed you to work late, say yes to things you didn't want, and endure situations that chipped away at your soul. But once you experienced even a moment of spiritual clarity, real clarity, where you touched something beyond the surface, you began to see just how counterfeit those rewards really were. The money didn't mean what it used to. The trophies lost their shine. You saw that none of it could fill the deep space inside of you that longed not for success, but for meaning, and that shift, while sacred, is also disruptive. It's disruptive because the system you once operated in, the reward system of the world, can no longer pull you forward. You are no longer hypnotized by the carrot on the stick. But here's the catch: you haven't yet built your new motivation system. So you're in this strange space where the old fuel no longer burns and the new source hasn't fully been tapped. That's why it feels like you're just drifting, detached, even lazy. You're not lazy. You've just lost your appetite for junk food and haven't yet learned how to cook real nourishment for your soul. That's a sacred pause, but it feels like a crisis if you don't understand what's happening. Spiritual awakening turns your inner compass away from external goals and toward internal alignment. It's not that money becomes evil or ambition dies completely. It's that why you do what you do has to be redefined. Most of your former drive was fueled by fear, insecurity, ego, and the need to prove something. After awakening, you can't fake it anymore. You literally can't. It's like trying to wear a mask you've already ripped off. It just won't fit. That's why jobs you used to tolerate become unbearable. That's why relationships that once felt exciting now feel draining. That's why your dreams feel distant, not because they've died, but because you now see they were built on borrowed values. Here's where the transformation gets deep. The universe, God, your higher self, whatever language resonates with you, is stripping away anything that was used to manipulate your behavior with false promises. You're being weaned off a reward system that was never built for your soul. That's not a punishment, that's a promotion, but most people quit in this in-between zone. They go back to the grind. They try to force themselves to care about things their soul has already outgrown. And that leads to burnout, depression, anxiety, and a soul that feels silenced again. If that's where you are right now, let me tell you this: your lack of motivation is not a flaw. It's a flag. It's waving at you and saying, don't go back. Keep walking. There's more. You're being invited into a deeper level of creation where what drives you is not what you can earn, but what you can express. Not what you can get, but what you can give. From a place of alignment, authenticity, and spiritual power. But here's the truth that most won't tell you. This transition is uncomfortable. There's a grieving process when you realize that the world you were succeeding in is not the world you're called to thrive in anymore. There's a loneliness when your goals don't align with the culture around you, and there's a silence that comes from walking away from the noise of constant chasing. That silence can be deafening at first. But sit with it. That's where the new voice is forming, the one that doesn't push you, but pulls you, the one that doesn't scream, but whispers, the one that doesn't manipulate, but invites. So if you feel stuck, unmotivated, detached, it's not that your drive is gone. It's that the source of your drive is being purified. You're being called to live from your spirit, not your ego, from presence, not pressure, and from calling, not conditioning. The world can't bribe you anymore because you've tasted something real. And once you've tasted real, fake will never satisfy again. That's why your old motivation died, and that's also why a new one is about to rise. You lost motivation not because you're broken, but because your old why died in the fire of truth. One of the most misunderstood shifts after a spiritual awakening is the sudden collapse of your old sense of drive, and the terrifying thought that maybe something inside you is broken. You used to wake up with goals, with plans, with a calendar full of things to chase. Now you stare at your phone, your journal, your vision board, and feel nothing. The spark is gone, the urgency is gone, the why is gone, and it's easy in that moment to start judging yourself. You ask, what's wrong with me? But here's the truth that very few people understand. You're not broken, you're being rebuilt. The part of you that used to be motivated was built on illusions. Your old why, that thing that pushed you forward, was often rooted in fear, scarcity, ego, or even unhealed pain. And when you awakened spiritually, when your consciousness expanded, the light of that truth burned down everything that was false, including your old motivations. Think about it. Before awakening, your why was likely shaped by someone else's expectations. Maybe it was to make your parents proud, or to finally prove your worth to the world. Maybe it was to silence the voice in your head that said you weren't enough. Maybe it was to outrun your past, to impress people who don't even know you, to win approval from a world that only values performance. That version of you built a why based on survival, not on truth, so of course it drove you. Survival is a powerful motivator, but once you awaken, you no longer want to survive, you want to live, and the strategies that helped you survive no longer work when you step into the light of truth. They die, and when your old why dies, it feels like your entire identity dies with it. That's why the loss of motivation hits so hard, because it's not just about energy or passion, it's about grief. You're grieving the death of your old self, the achiever, the performer, the overfunctioner, the people pleaser, the ego-driven dreamer. All of those versions of you carried a why that was tied to validation and control. And now they're gone. What you're feeling isn't laziness, it's mourning, but no one tells you that. No one tells you that there's a sacred grief that follows awakening. Because in a culture obsessed with hustle, we're taught that if we're not moving forward, we're failing. But from a spiritual lens, sometimes stillness is sacred. Sometimes emptiness is not the problem, it's the preparation. So what do you do when your old why dies and a new one hasn't fully arrived yet? You wait, you listen, you strip away the noise. You stop forcing clarity and allow space for a new voice to emerge, because you will find a new why. But it won't come from your mind, it'll come from your spirit. It won't sound like, I need to get this to feel worthy. It'll sound like, I am worthy, and this is how I want to express that truth. That's real motivation. That's lasting motivation. That's divine motivation. But to get there, you have to walk through the fire of truth where your old why is consumed. The beautiful, and sometimes brutal, part about awakening is that it reveals what's real and burns away what's not. You might feel like you're lost, like you have no direction, but what's really happening is that your soul is detoxing from decades of false direction. You're learning how to want again, not from fear. Not from pressure, but from love, from alignment, from divine assignment, and let me tell you, once that kind of motivation starts to rise in you, it's unstoppable, because it's no longer tied to outcome. It's tied to obedience. It's no longer chasing a reward. It is the reward, but don't skip the in-between, that space where your old why is gone and the new one hasn't fully landed. That's sacred ground. That's where God shapes you. That's where your real self emerges. That's where your desires get purified, your vision gets clarified, and your heart gets recalibrated to something deeper than success, significance. You'll no longer need to prove anything. You'll no longer chase things just to feel valuable. Your life will begin to move from a place of purpose, and that purpose will pull you with power, not pressure. So if you feel unmotivated, uninspired, or stuck, it's not the end. It's the middle. You're in the fire. You're in the process. Your old why is gone because it was never really yours to begin with, and that's not a breakdown. That's a breakthrough. Let it burn, let it fall, and when the ashes settle, you'll rise, not as the person who needs motivation to push them, but as the one who is led by a vision so clear, so aligned, and so soul deep that nothing can stop it. Not even you. Purpose replaces pressure, so what used to drive you no longer moves you. One of the clearest signs of spiritual awakening is the shift from pressure to purpose. And this shift can feel like an identity crisis if you don't understand what's happening. For awakening, you were probably fueled by pressure every single day. Pressure to succeed, pressure to provide, pressure to stay ahead, pressure to not fall behind, pressure to prove your value. Pressure to live up to a version of yourself that the world handed you, not the one your soul designed. Pressure became your fuel source. It was the engine of your motivation. You moved fast, you pushed hard, you got results. But it was all powered by the fear of what would happen if you didn't. And let's not lie. Pressure works. That's why so many people live under it. You hit deadlines, you meet goals, you check boxes, but here's the hidden cost. Pressure may produce results, but it also produces burnout, anxiety, disconnection, and spiritual numbness. Then something shifts. You awaken. You begin to see through the illusion. You stop confusing productivity with purpose. You realize you were chasing shadows, not light, and all of a sudden, pressure no longer motivates you. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because your soul refuses to move for the wrong reasons anymore. That's when confusion sets in, because you're used to being driven. You're used to being the one everyone counts on. You're used to showing up with fire in your eyes, but now that fire feels like it's been extinguished, and you don't know what to replace it with. You're standing in a space where the old system doesn't work and the new one hasn't fully kicked in. Here's the truth. You're transitioning from pressure to purpose, and that transition feels like a death before it feels like a resurrection. You're learning how to be moved by something deeper than fear. You're learning how to operate from a place of truth instead of tension. Pressure always says you have to. Purpose says you get to. Pressure says if you don't do this, you'll fail. Purpose says if you do this, you'll grow. It's a completely different vibration, and your nervous system feels the difference even before your mind can articulate it. So yes, your body resists pressure now. Yes, your mind shuts down when you try to force old methods. That's not a problem. That's proof you've outgrown the need to be manipulated by fear to take action. But here's the challenge. The world you live in still runs on pressure. Your job expects you to hustle. Social media praises you when you're grinding. People admire your busyness, and the moment you slow down, step back, or stop chasing, you risk being labeled as lazy, unmotivated, or even lost. So you start doubting yourself. You start questioning your worth. You wonder if maybe you do need that pressure after all. Don't fall for it. Pressure may be familiar, but it's not faithful. It can't carry you into the next version of your life. It was good for survival, but you're not surviving anymore. You're awakening, and awakened people don't move the same way. Purpose, on the other hand, is rooted in alignment. It doesn't rush you, it calls you. It doesn't bully you, it invites you. It doesn't exhaust you, it energizes you. When you're connected to your purpose, you move with flow instead of force. You take action from a place of inner clarity, not external demand. And yes, that action still requires discipline. Yes, you'll still face challenges, but the motive behind your movement is different. You're not running from anything, you're being pulled by something higher. That's the kind of drive that sustains you. That's the kind of drive that heals you while it builds you. Now let's be honest. Purpose doesn't always show up as a thunderbolt. It's not always loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks and applause. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it takes time. And that's what makes this stage so vulnerable. You've let go of the whip of pressure, but you haven't yet fully anchored into the rhythm of purpose. That's why many people relapse into old patterns. They return to pressure because at least it's predictable, but predictable isn't the same as powerful. If you want to step into purpose, you have to be willing to sit in the silence. You have to be willing to ask hard questions. You have to be willing to let go of outcomes and trust the process, because purpose doesn't live in the mind, it lives in the soul. So if you feel like nothing's moving you anymore, don't panic, you're not broken. You're not behind, you're in between. The engine of pressure is out of gas, and that's a gift. It means you're ready to be driven by something eternal, not external. You're ready to build a life that feels good inside, not just one that looks good outside. You're ready to move with meaning. You're ready to step into purpose. And once purpose starts driving you, you'll never need pressure again. When ego dies, false ambition dies with it. Now you must lead from alignment, not achievement. The death of ego during a spiritual awakening is not some poetic metaphor. It's a raw, painful, and necessary shedding of everything you thought made you successful. Ego is the architect of false ambition. It's the voice that told you to outwork, outshine, and outdo everyone. It's the reason you couldn't rest, the reason you felt behind even when you were ahead, the reason you chased achievement like it was oxygen, because without it, you didn't know who you were. But then, something divine cracked you open, you awakened, you caught a glimpse of yourself without all the titles, trophies, and labels, and you realized the real you was already enough. That moment of awakening, no matter how brief, starts the dismantling of ego's empire. And when ego dies, so does everything it built. That includes the ambition that once kept you running full speed toward goals that, deep down, never truly satisfied you. That's why your motivation is gone. Because your engine, the ego, has stalled, and that's not a failure. That's freedom trying to introduce itself. Let's tell the truth. Most ambition isn't pure. It's not about purpose. It's about performance. It's about control. It's about proving to the world or yourself that you matter, that you're enough, that your past pain didn't win, that the voices in your head were wrong. So we chase success not from desire but from damage, not from clarity but from confusion. We wear ambition like armor to protect us from our deepest insecurities. And when ego is in charge, it will sacrifice peace for applause every single time. It will trade authenticity for attention, rest for relevance, and love for likes. Ego doesn't care about your soul, it only cares that you look like you're winning. Even if you're dying inside, and the worst part, it works for a while, you get ahead, you get praise, you get results. But you also get anxiety, burnout, emotional numbness, and a deep ache that success can't fix. And that ache is what finally wakes you up. Spiritual awakening doesn't destroy your ambition, it purifies it. It strips away the need to be seen, approved of, or admired, and replaces it with a quiet, steady hunger to be aligned with your highest truth. But that transition is messy. When false ambition dies, it takes with it the identity you once clung to. You're no longer the overachiever. You're no longer the one everyone calls driven. You're no longer the person who defines themselves by goals, metrics, and performance, and that leaves a void, a terrifying void. Because if you're not chasing achievement, then who are you? What are you even doing? That's the question the ego can't answer, but your soul can. Because the truth is, you were never meant to lead your life from achievement. You were meant to lead from alignment. Alignment means your actions match your values. It means your external life reflects your internal truth. It means you're no longer trying to be something. You're simply expressing who you already are. And that shift from chasing to expressing changes everything. You start choosing peace over pressure, integrity over image, depth over display. You stop chasing the illusion of making it and start living the reality of already being whole. That's when you begin to understand what real ambition looks like, not the kind that comes from lack, but the kind that comes from love, not the kind that says, I need to prove something, but the kind that says, I have something to give. But make no mistake, alignment requires courage. Because the world will still reward achievement more than authenticity. People will still cheer for the hustle, not the healing. Your old networks, your old mentors, maybe even your old self will whisper, go back, play the game, get back on the track. But your soul will quietly respond, that game is over, that race was never mine, and you'll have to choose between the validation of the crowd or the guidance of your spirit, between being driven by ego or being led by truth, between staying visible for the wrong reasons or becoming invisible for the right ones for a season. This is why you feel unmotivated, because the driver is gone, and now something deeper wants to take the wheel. You're being invited to reimagine what success means, to stop measuring your value by how high you climb and start measuring it by how true you stay. Alignment doesn't always look impressive, but it feels right. It brings peace, clarity, energy, flow. When you lead from alignment, you're not drained by your work. You're energized by it. You're not overwhelmed by your goals. You're inspired by your mission. You're no longer playing the game. You're building something real. So if you're feeling stuck, like your goals don't move you anymore, understand this. It's not the end of your ambition. It's the rebirth of your authenticity. You don't need more motivation. You need more alignment. You don't need to push harder. You need to listen deeper. The ego's voice is loud and frantic. The soul's voice is quiet but powerful. And now that the noise has died down, you can finally hear what your life has been trying to say all along. You were never here to impress. You were here to impact, but it starts with alignment, always. The universe stripped your old motivation to make space for your real mission. There comes a moment after spiritual awakening when everything you once cared about begins to dissolve. The goals you once obsessed over lose their shine. The rewards that used to excite you now feel empty. The grind that used to give you a sense of control now feels like quicksand, and you're left sitting in the middle of your life wondering, what happened to me? Where did all my fire go? Why don't I care anymore? But here's the truth most people won't tell you. You didn't lose motivation because you're off track. You lost it because you're finally on the edge of something real. What you're feeling isn't failure. It's the sacred dismantling. It's the divine demolition. It's the universe stripping away the artificial so it can reveal the authentic. You've been emptied not to be abandoned, but to be reassigned. You see, most of us come into this world and are quickly taught to want what everyone else wants. We inherit dreams we never questioned. We pursue careers we never deeply chose. We chase lifestyles we saw on screens, but never asked if they aligned with our soul. And all of that conditioning builds a framework of false motivation. We run hard after dreams that aren't really ours, with energy that isn't really clean, in pursuit of a version of success that was never rooted in truth. And here's what's wild. The universe lets you. It lets you go after it. It lets you taste it. Sometimes it even lets you get it, but then it disrupts you, it cracks you open, and it begins to take everything that was never meant for the real you. Not to punish you, but to purify you, not to make your life smaller, but to prepare you for a mission that's too big to carry ego with it. That's what you're walking through now, not a burnout, not a depression, but a sacred redesign. The universe is reorganizing your inner world so you can finally step into your actual purpose, and the first step in that process is subtraction. It has to take what's in your hands before it can give you what's in your heart. That's why your old motivation had to die. That's why your goals fell apart. That's why the hunger to chase what used to light you up suddenly vanished. It's not because you're lost. It's because you're being found. And the road to being found always passes through a season of sacred emptiness, that in-between space where you're no longer who you used to be, but not yet who you're becoming. That space where nothing makes sense, but everything is being rebuilt from the inside out. But here's what no one tells you. This emptiness is intelligence. This silence is the soil for your new mission, and your mission won't come with pressure. It won't come with performance. It will come with peace. Your mission isn't just a job or a dream. It's the thing your soul was designed to become, and here's the wild thing. It's already inside you, but the noise of the world had to be stripped away so you could finally hear it. So you could stop chasing and start listening. So you could stop performing and start aligning. So you could stop grinding and start creating from truth. You'll know you're getting close to your mission because what starts to matter to you changes. You begin to value authenticity over approval, integrity over image, stillness over stimulation, depth over distraction. You start craving contribution over consumption. And even if you don't have the full clarity yet, your soul begins to whisper, there's more for you. Not more things, not more titles, but more meaning, more alignment, more impact, and it won't come through force. It'll come through flow. You won't have to push for it. It'll pull you. But let's be honest. This season of waiting, this space between old motivation and new mission is not easy. It's frustrating, it's confusing, it's vulnerable because you're used to measuring yourself by output. You're used to defining your value by what you do, and now you're being asked to rest, to let go, to trust, and that feels like dying because for so long your identity was wrapped in momentum. Now it's being rooted in meaning, and meaning takes time. Meaning requires surrender, but once it arrives, everything changes. Because your mission is not something you chase, it's something you become. So if you feel numb, stuck, or empty, breathe. You're not broken, you're not lost, you're being recalibrated. The universe is doing spiritual surgery, cutting away what no longer belongs, removing what never served your soul, and making room for a deeper fire to rise. The kind of fire that doesn't burn you out. It builds you. The kind of fire that doesn't come from hype, it comes from heaven. And once you step into your true mission, you won't need external motivation ever again, because purpose isn't something that pushes you. It pulls you every single day. So let the old version of you fall. Let the silence do its work. Let the space be sacred, because what's rising in you is not just a new chapter. It's a new calling, and the world doesn't need another former pretending to be fulfilled. It needs someone who's awake, someone who's real, someone who's walking in the fullness of their mission. That someone is you.